Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Rachel Romano. Hey, Rachel, how
Hey,
are you today?
good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good to see you. Thanks for
Good.
coming on the show. So,
Sure.
to start with, I'd like to show a couple of images of yours for those people who are unfamiliar with your work. And I was hoping
Okay.
you could just, I went on your website and I saw lots of different pictures, but I selected just a few pieces that
Okay.
sort of caught my eye. So this one in particular, um, I love the narrative in this, but I also
hmm
love the variety of textures. Can you tell me what's this picture about?
Well, so I was preparing for a show last year, which I had to postpone, and these images came to me. This one in particular, I don't dream my images, but I had this idea of just how absurd and crazy life is, and and how I was feeling at that moment, actually. And it was a real challenge for me because it's not that it's a departure, but my paintings are getting more and more colorful. And I was trying to figure out how do I make that all cohesive. And as you say, textures, I don't necessarily do a lot of textures. And I find I'm doing more and more, even though my work isn't texturized, there's a lot more texture in the description rather than the actual paint. And it was just, I had flames, it had all this stuff. I just knew that I felt like my head was a maze, and that
Okay.
and it was just like, oh my God, I can't seem to find my way out. And how am I going to do that? And that's where that came about.
Well, when I'm talking about textures, I'm not just talking about rough textures as well.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you have this background that's activated, but what makes it so is the skin tone, the combination of those two textures next to each other. Really, it's like having black and white next to each other for me.
Yeah, it's and that background challenged me because I don't typically do backgrounds like
Mhm.
that. They tend to be more solid, and I'm trying to, I don't want to say experiment, but stretch a little bit and figure out how I can incorporate backgrounds without putting a whole other narrative back there.
You
That
could say
it's not,
experiment.
yeah, yeah. And I'm known for my skin tones. So I mean, I do have most of my paintings, the skin is very important. The shading around the eye is really, really important to me because that's such a focal point.
hmm That's a
So
it's that sounds like the title of your autobiography. I'm known for my skin tones.
yeah,
I
known for my
love
skin
that. So
tones.
so I thought that was a great piece. But I
Yeah.
also this one, which was the title card.
Yeah.
This is earlier, correct?
No, I just did this last summer,
Oh, this is
2000.
last summer. Okay.
All of these are, well, so far what you picked. So the previous one was 2023. This is 2022. I was on a residency in France,
Okay.
and it's very big, um, comparatively to the other one. And I was listening to US news in my studio or reading on the iPhone or whatever. And it was all about just what's going on in the world. And to me, you don't know if these are the harbingers of what's to come or they're the protectors of what's to come in the world. And I was thinking about the Grant Wood painting, which is an amazing, brilliant painting, but how much our world has changed. Like that is of a different era, a different way of life that almost doesn't exist anymore. And so what does our life exist of? Sort of barren, fire,
hmm
gas, death, all these things. And being, I have a son, and just being, there's positive and negatives to this painting in the sense that I want people to, of course, take away their own narrative, but I want them to find the resilience and the strengths in these two beings in this sort of landscape. And whatever that is their decision on what kind of resilience or strength that is. But it just came, a lot of my paintings are about that. It's about the resilience of who we are and all that we're bombarded with on a daily basis.
I love the facial expressions. Neither of them look pleased to be there. They-
No, and
they-
it's a weight that we
yeah,
all bear. And our children, if those who have children or other people's children, are going to have to bear it even more.
yeah. Well, there's
Yeah.
there's so much. there's a lot to chew on in this picture because
Yeah,
everything is so loaded with symbols, the star, the flowers, the
yeah.
flame, it all works together. And funny enough that, I have that same hat. So it's funny that I'm seeing it again today.
So you need to wear that in an interview.
Right. So this particular picture, the reason I chose this is one of the things that I love because, when you talk about art on the street with anybody, it's usually a very solemn kind of a thing. People are very serious about it, which makes it, when I find pictures that make me laugh or have a sense of humor in them, that much more enjoyable for me. So to me, it's
Yeah.
all about that bear in the background. As soon as you put the hat on him, right? There's
Well,
something in there. I know that
well,
I know it's a serious picture, but it does make me laugh.
it is a serious picture. However, all my paintings have a bit of a Shakespearean quality where there's the humor in the death
Hmm.
or the sorrow of it all. It's the only way I can get through, frankly, because if I just painted somber and I dreamed of being Anselm Kiefer, but that's not who I am. I do love the black humor of life and finding that ridiculousness that we come across. And originally I had a pope in there, kind of like our bishop. And I was like, no, I need a bear as the soothsayer, the guy that's sort of it all with the upside down question mark. Like, really?
Yeah.
And it is all about these misfits and them adoring her and the protection and the suffering that they're going through, but also the positivity in the collective and gathering together and uniting. And then this bear, the bear that's the grounding element. And I love that bear. I mean, this is one of my favorite paintings. Truly is one of
Really?
my favorites. Yeah.
It to me, the fun part about the pictures, not just the bear, but as my eye travels around, I mean, it's clear that you're making the viewer go in and out of the picture all the time.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's wonderful that you're smart enough to be able to lead the eye around. And then you start discovering additional, like, little secrets within it. Like, it honestly, half the time I looked at this picture, I did not realize that the female figure had, like, those feet, right? So
The
I was
hooves.
blind to that. And then as soon as I saw it, it has that moment where it flips for you, like,
Yeah.
okay, wait, this is not about what I thought it was. So
Yeah.
I just find it quite incredibly enjoyable. But I do see some textures starting to creep in, like the guy's shirt with those textures,
Yeah.
but it's also that plain background again, the combination
Yeah.
of those two. It's working. It's working for me. So I like this picture.
Thank you.
So I wanted to include a drawing of yours.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because a lot of times artists just present themselves as sort of one thing, but I found a whole bunch of drawings on your site, and
Yeah.
this one in particular I really liked. Can you tell me a bit about this?
So this is one of my it's my first drawing actually. I didn't know I could it sounds terrible. I didn't really know I could draw. I mean, I knew I could draw to do a painting, but I didn't know I could draw. And this image came to me. It's called Bird Boy. And look, I still own this unless someone offers me a lot of money. I'm not parting with it because you tend to draw people and I drew my son without realizing it. And so it has I love seeing it every day in my house. I usually get rid of all my work, but this is one that stayed and it's big. It's almost 60 inches tall.
Wow. Okay. It's deceiving.
So yeah. So and I'm gonna actually revisit drawing for my next show because this kind of drawing, I should say, because I had such great joy in it and the discovery of the line and sort of, as you say, texture, even, of what's going on, letting things fall away. And sometimes I forget to just stop and leave it blank. And
Oh,
I like, okay, is that finished enough? Or, is it described enough or whatever? And some of that is just a happenstance because of painting for me, where the drawing allows me to be let go some. And I'm trying to figure out how to bring that into my painting. That's a whole other challenge and discussion. But
yeah.
this drawing is about again, our youth, the protectorate, there's all these skulls around him, symbolic to what has gone.
Mhm.
I did a painting of this actually. It's same size. It
Mm.
changed a bit. The pages around the boy instead. And
Is this
uh,
Conti crayon, or is it?
yes, this is Conti with rabbit skin glue over the top. Sometimes I use shellac, but what I
Mhm.
like when you do that, it breaks down the line a bit.
Mhm.
It's kind of a cheat, without you having to go in there and be so precise about breaking down the line, or I just let it go where it goes.
Uh-huh.
And if I have to touch up a bit, I do. And I just know how my son was so much in nature. Even he's not so much today. He doesn't think he is, but he still is a nature boy. And just how he was so at one with who he was, and
Mm-hmm.
and and strong too. Like if you look at children and you can see inside them, it may not be apparent their resilience, but
Mm-hmm.
they have a tremendous strength and
Mm-hmm.
fearlessness in them if we let them have that. And they're very grounded. So,
Speaking of tremendous strength, I thought this photograph was fantastic. It was sort of a
well,
great way. Go ahead.
you can see the drawing of the Mad Queen there
Mm-hmm.
on that's something I'm trying to again figure out. How do I just sketched it out like that, one sketch, one and done,
Mm-hmm.
on canvas. This was all preparing for a show in France, which I had to postpone. And a lot of this work now is, well, some is at Stanek, and then I have some here in the studio that's going to a show. But it was the first real portrait I had done of myself in a studio, and I thought I gotta have one of these. I mean, people people want to see the artist. We can
Mm-hmm.
show our artwork all the time, but they love to see the artist in their space.
Mm-hmm. I love
And
the creepers too. The
the,
shoes.
the oh yeah.
And it didn't get by me. I saw those. It's a little glimpse. So that was great. So I'm curious. I'm going to start this interview like I start a lot of the interviews. I
Yeah.
want to know about your beginnings, and in particular, when you were a kid, was there any event or anything that you can remember that was like your first exposure to art, like the first thing that you can remember about?
Um, it, my great grandfather was a painter, so I had those paintings in my
Oh,
house. He was a sculptor. But
okay.
most importantly, my mom, I grew up with a single mom. I did have a dad, but he wasn't around. We would see him once a month in New York. And from a very young age, he would take me to the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Okay.
And I don't remember any particular, people say, oh, this painting struck me. For me, it was kind of an infusion of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just it's mammoth, first of all. And so every month we go in there, and then we go to the head shop below his apartment down in Greenwich Village, and pick out various cool stuff, not head shop stuff, but they had all kinds of like stickers, magazines, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was a poet and had um he was very good friends with Leonard Cohen. He has got a portrait of himself by Elaine de Kooning in his house, in his apartment. So he was always surrounded by influential artists, and I think that just imprinted on me. And he was a storyteller, and more than anything, he gave me that gift of story. I think I mean I could paint anything, but I really have story to tell, and it
Mm-hmm.
took me a long time to realize that. And I was about 57 when I did.
Well, okay.
So
I got you. So it sounds like you were raised in an art environment,
yes, very much so.
and so I assume you becoming an artist was not a great shock.
Well, I graduated high school not applying to college,
Okay.
and we had some big family difficulties. I was supposed to go to Pratt and didn't. So I went into advertising and then architecture and landscapes design. And it wasn't until I went to art school for 1 year when I was 38 at Lime Academy of Art, which was very typical atelier. It just kind of teaches you all about the art and painting and drawing the figure. I had hoped to go for 4 years, and I just couldn't. I had a 2-year-old. And so fast forward,
Mm-hmm.
I started at 57 And I said,
Okay.
that's it. And I just went for it.
Just dive right in.
I did dive right in.
I love hearing these stories. So you talked a little bit earlier about, we mentioned dreams, and you said, no, I don't paint my dreams, but I am curious about your ideas, your sparks, the creativity sparks. Where do these stories come from? When you walk into the studio, are they just in your head, or do they develop? How does that work?
So I am very much a connector with people, and as much as I love being solitary, I love being with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I pick up little snippets, and they plant seeds. The pandemic was really hard for me for that, because you weren't seeing anybody.
Yeah.
And I felt completely shut down. Actually, there were people saying, "Oh, I'm painting everything." I'm like, "Oh my God, my whole narrative just went away." What the heck, right?
So you get
So
your ideas by just being human and interacting with
that's right.
society.
And some may be injected in there is some personal experience. I only have one painting that I could say, maybe two, that are truly my personal experience. I don't paint mythology. I sometimes will paint about Eve, but it's again based around a narrative that I see going on, not so much the biblical story or the mythology of, Zeus and whoever. I mean, it's just not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's more important for me to connect with human nature, our responses to what's going on cyclically and in society. And it's just, that's what feeds me. And if I don't have that, as much as I'd love to live in a cabin in the woods, I'd probably quit painting.
I get you. So you've got this kernel of an idea in your head. Do you keep a sketchbook? Do you sketch stuff out
Well, I'm trying
beforehand?
to that. I really stink at that. So,
Okay. Do you have to be better at it? I mean, it's not a requirement.
Because some people, what it does do is it gets your brain working. It is a tool to get your brain working. And I go right to, usually right to the canvas. I take a brush and start to sketch. The idea is there. I might do a scribble in my sketchbook. And then when I say scribble, sometimes I have to write written notes because I don't even know what I sketched.
Right, yeah.
I'm trying to do a little bit more because people have wanted some sketches. And so I'm thinking, well, this is a great way to possibly either with the painting or offer it as a secondary thing, a sketch.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not it's like journaling. You always think, great, I'm going to journal. I'm like, I'm going to have my coffee. I don't want to journal. Like, really, who wants to do that?
That's always a weird thing. I've always, there's no way I could ever do anything like that. Yeah.
Not in me.
Well, when I saw your work the first time, I speak to a lot of artists. So to me, yours was, I could imagine that you did sort of, almost like barf up your ideas onto the canvas, but then you'd be changing it on the canvas
all the time.
Right. So it's a constant move the arm, move the fingers, change the face, that kind of a, okay.
I try to be fearless about that because I think whenever you get too precious with anything, I mean, I shouldn't say that. Rembrandt is precious and his stuff is flippin' gorgeous. But for me, if I get too precious, in the end, I'll let something out the door that I'm not happy with. So that's one of the reasons right now I've been going through, and I think it's because I'm changing. I've been struggling to get these paintings done, and it's not because I'm not painting, but I'm constantly going, oh God, I really hate that. What am I doing there? And and it's not about getting something technically right. It's about getting the feeling across of what I want to say.
Mm-hmm. So when you first started to now, when you look back, do you see the evolution in your work? I mean, is there a change that's consistent?
So it's gotten way more colorful.
Okay.
It's also gotten more intricate. My painting has gotten better. I was a little afraid, just like starting anything, getting on a bicycle. I was afraid to take the training wheels off and just paint. And that still holds me back sometimes. I want to just let loose. Mm-hmm. And, you almost need someone to chain you up and beat you over the head and go, okay, now just don't paint that.
Right.
You know? So,
So here's the
yeah.
$1 million question, which is, I notice that I find there's two types of artists who, when they go through change. There's a kind of artist that has a usual it's a progression, like a slide when they change. Then they look back at the last piece, and then they'll maybe make alterations, and their work changes over time. And then there's other kind of artists that get like clear breaks. Like one day they walked in and said, "I'm not going to do that anymore. I want to try this or something." Have you ever had clean breaks like that, or has it
No,
always been a slide so far?
I am such a one lane girl.
Okay.
I look at other artists that try everything, and I would love that because I love seeing experimental artists. But I love what I do. I have something I really want to say. My change is gradual. I try to be open to it. And it's not because I'm afraid to change. It's just, I also think this is my personal belief, and I'm not going to say anyone else is wrong about it. When you force change sometimes, and you put it out there, oh, it changed, it sometimes doesn't ring true. And for me, I need to let the change come as it comes. And if that ends up being a clean break, well, okay,
Yeah.
fine. I'll recognize. It's like the color. When I
Right.
realized I'm painting so much in color, I suddenly dawned on me in the shower one day, best place for thinking. You never can remember after you get out. But
Mm-hmm.
it I realized it's a way for me to soften the blow.
Yeah.
If I painted this all dark and really I have a painting with a girl throwing knives in it, and if I
Mhm.
really painted the blood and guts of it, a lot of people would be like, they're already still, but they'd be really, and
So what
it might, yeah.
there's change within technique, there's change within palette, and tell me about the change within the storyline. Have you felt that there's been changes? Have they gotten darker or deeper or
They've gotten bolder.
bolder? Okay.
Yeah. So the darkness is already there, but it's more boldness in the darkness. And without being explicit, I want to say more with it. And some people may contradict me on that. That's fine. Everyone has their opinion. But
Hmm.
to me, I am trying, this is something I'm working toward, is to be bolder about what I do, not being afraid to make that mark or say what I want to say without being grotesque, or because it took me a long time to realize that I want to play dark and sorrowful and all of this. And someone said, you have to get to the darkness, go through the darkness to get to the light. I'll never forget that. And I thought, oh crap, I'm this like colorful painter. I'm like, what? I really don't want to paint this. And I realized it's who I am. And that's sometimes hard to
Yeah.
reckon with who you are.
Yeah.
I paint a bear in the background with a red cap on,
Uh-huh.
is that just too goofy,
No. As an outsider, I will say I particularly I love pictures with storylines. I love them when they're difficult. But I truly think that there's something to be said about work that is true to a vision. In other
Mhm.
words, as artists, I know we're constantly being bombarded with you should do this or you should do that. And
I,
even as an artist, I was like, "Ooh, I would have loved to have done this and that."
mm,
But to be able to say, like, you know what, nobody wants that bear in that picture, but I want that bear because that bear is, that's me as a bear kind of a thing. I respect that because I find that there seems to be fewer and fewer artists that can do that anymore that
yeah.
I'm running across a lot of artists that they don't have that gumption, and to me that's like so foreign.
I love
That
that gumption. I
I
like
know.
gumption.
And that's a great word, by the way. You can
It is a
use
great word.
that. You ever experiment with other materials aside from painting and drawing? Did you ever do any photography or sculpture? Or I saw you had
No,
some prints or anything like that.
I just recently, when I go to France, I get to work with this friends that own a print gallery, and
Mm,
we make a deal where he makes a deal with the artist. We do monotypes, and
yeah,
it's like finger painting. It's so much fun.
yeah.
It's just so that's the only thing that's outside of sort of the painting, because it's so immediate, and you're
Hmm.
like one and done. You're done. That's it. You got to live with it. And
That's the
so
rush of being an artist, for being a painter, though. You know,
yeah, yeah.
slowing down. I think I would love to see your work as etchings, like multi-plate colored etchings. I think you could do a lot with those textures. But
Yeah,
at the same time, I know how long it takes, which is why you need a master printer. You need somebody that
yeah.
you can just, here
So
you go,
you
you do this kind of thing.
you
Uh,
say that, so just quickly, you say that. I've always wanted to do tapestries and turn
oh
one of my
yeah.
paintings into a tapestry, but it's like it'll take me 50 years and I'll be dead.
No, it won't. Wait a minute. Go and look at an artist I just interviewed. His name is Steve Donegan. He found a great way. He outsources it. So
Oh wow.
we'll talk
Okay.
about that later
Yeah.
because I was like wondering like the same thing. All right, I've got time for two more quick questions. The first one is with figurative work, is are all your figures imaginative, or do you ever sometimes use a model in some form?
I don't ever use a model.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that. I don't ever start using a model because I find I get so wrapped up into the actual drawing of the model
Mhm.
that I lose. I want to paint by feeling, and
Right,
my
right.
are about what I feel. I will go in, let's say I'm really desperate on a hand. One time I painted a hand completely backwards, the thumb on the wrong side. I'm like, what the hell did I just do? And so I was like, I don't know where my brain went, but I took a photograph of my hand to then correct that. That's about as far as I get at using a model.
About
I can
it. Yeah.
draw from the model, but it's not where I want to be.
All right. I just want to clarify. It does not look like you use models. It does look
Yeah.
invented. So I was just kind of curious about that. So last question I have for you. Question I ask every artist, so you might know what's coming. What does making art do for you?
Oh my God, it feeds my soul. It makes me want to get up every day. It makes life good. I mean, yeah, okay, we want to sell art, but honestly, if I had to quit art tomorrow, I don't know what I would do, shrivel up and die. I don't know.
Is that an
I mean,
option?
well, no, possibly, yes. But I started this, I felt like, it was about 7 years ago, maybe 8 now. I felt like I was going to die if I didn't do this. And this was the time, and I had to just do it. So there you go.
Yeah, I get it. So do a lot of other artists. Yeah, that
Yeah.
must have it making going through the pandemic was really challenging for just about every artist I've talked with. It took them at least 6 months or a year within it just to get rolling back up again. And some artists
Yeah.
still aren't back. So
I'm
um,
just getting back.
just
Really, just
getting back.
year and a half has been just getting back. And I just had to give over to the grace of watching Netflix and being okay with it.
Hmm.
That this is
Perfect.
permanent.
Right. Well, I so want to thank you for coming by today to talk
It
to me
was
about
great.
your work. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing it in person. It's one of the things I haven't done yet. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch today and to hear Rachel talk about her work. Of course, like, share, and subscribe. That really encourages us to keep doing these kind of things. So we really want to thank you for watching today. And again, thank you, Rachel, for
You're
spending the
quite
time
welcome.
to
Thank
talk to me
you for
about your
having
work.
me on. I really appreciate it so much.
Very welcome. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.